All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Dan Seaman and I am a Regional Technical Assistance Coordinator with the Wisconsin RtI Center. I serve in the East region, so I cover CISAs 6, 7, and 8. And I see quite a few familiar names on the attendee list, so welcome. And I also have an emphasis on academic implementation of a culturally responsive multi-level system of support. And also presenting with me is...
Hi, I'm Jennifer Grenke. I'm also a Wisconsin RtI Center Technical Assistance Coordinator. My focus is on behavior, and I cover CISAs 8, 9, and 12. And then Dan and I, and then Sarah, who will join us in a little bit, are all on the family engagement team, focusing with the culturally responsive multi-level system of support. So engaging families and partnering with them in their child's academic success.
Okay, so as we are getting things started, if Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind, for those of you just joining, please, the link that you see on your screen, the shortened link, please go to that link and complete the information of who is watching. And also, if you are watching with a group, please go through and add their information as well. We do want to keep track of who is attending and make sure that we can follow up and share resources with everyone who's on. So I'll give you a little, we will show that link again later on just so anyone that joins. All right, so without further ado, on this kind of gloomy, rainy day, Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind moving ahead on the slide. Okay.
Did that take? Okay.
Yep. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with GoToWebinar, you do have a few options. The control panel should look like this. If you have questions that you would like to submit to Jennifer, Sarah, or myself, you can enter them in the question box, and we will work on monitoring that. Also, as I rearrange a few things here. Also, if you are all muted as part of the webinar, just from personal experience, if we have tons of people unmuted, you get a whole lot of awesome feedback and reverberations. So if you do have a question, you can enter it in the chat box, or on your left-hand side, you should see a little hand with a green arrow pointing up. So if you do want to ask a question live, you can click on that, and that will raise your hand, and then from our end, we can unmute you and you can ask your question. So, all right. So Jennifer and Sarah and myself, we would like you to welcome you to our webinar series. We are talking about family engagement within a culturally responsive multi-level system of support. So we have the 3 E's, which is a framework for schools to better partner with the RtI Center and the culturally responsive multi-level system of support, which is embrace, engage, and empower. So on our last webinar series, we had some difficulties due to time constraints. So we wanted to start off by going over everyone with everyone again. What does embrace, engage, and empower mean, and how does that look in schools? And then after that, we will have some schools that will showcase how they've been working on improving family engagement within their buildings. So, okay, and we do have a question, so where do we document attendance? Yep, the link is on the PowerPoint, and also if you open up your chat window, there is a link. One of the messages that I sent does have that link available there. So, all right. So, as we're looking at partnering with families in a culturally responsive multi-level system support, for those of you who were on during our first webinar, you did see this this continuum looks at things that are lower impact in terms of empowering families and partnering with families. So a lot of those like celebrations, potlucks, class parties, fundraisers, those typically are more on the embracing end. So those are activities that schools can do to help embrace the families that they serve. As you're looking at more in the middle, those are sharing academic and behavioral expectations with families, having literacy and math nights, using family surveys and gathering feedback. Those are more on the engaging end. And also, if you think about it, those activities are typically more two-way communication. So it's not just the school sharing information, but it's also the school gathering and using information from families. And then on the right-hand side, those are more higher impact areas where those are empowering families and helping them take more ownership and engage and empower them to help meet the needs of their children in terms of learning and setting goals for them. So one of the schools that we have sharing today, they will be showing having the academic parent-teacher teams, which really is a nice example of how to help empower parents. So, and also, so some of those strategies that you see, those have the bold box around. Those are actually strategies that have been highlighted in DPI's Promoting Excellence for All. So there's a lot of really great resources on that website for Promoting Excellence for All. They have a lot of really great examples on how schools can do a better job of connecting and partnering with families and communities. And if you want, we can also share the link to that website as we move along. So looking at...
So last time...
Go ahead.
Dan, did you have to finish something on that
Nope.
slide? I'm sorry. Okay. So last time when we met and did this webinar, we actually ran out of time. So I'm just going to review these slides very briefly. And really what this is getting at is we need to be intentional about our practices and partnering with parents and with families. And we can do that using the 3 E's. It's just a strategy that you can use to increase your practices in your building. So embracing, like Dan mentioned, it's really where we're getting to know the families, drawing them into the school, understanding the cultural background of our families and their preferences. What we really need to do is dig deeper and intentionally dig deeper so that we have systemic practices to embrace, engage, and empower families versus just some of those lower impacts. So, just those potlucks and some of those activities that we have that we really don't get that two-way communication with the families. And then when we get to the engagement is where you get that two-way communication. And what we want is to have those systemic practices and procedures that foster strong relationships between families and school staff. And we really need to have your school administration providing guidance and support that enables that ongoing, authentic, and meaningful communication with the families. And then that third E, that empowering, is we want parents to be champions of their children and to understand what is needed for children to be successful in school. So can you think of some markers that your school shares regarding systemic practices for engaging families in this process and in this journey of educating their children? And do they provide professional development to your staff on how to engage families and actually the benefits of engaging families? All of this can help parents support our statewide effort of all students being college and career ready. So if we as educational staff enlist some coaching strategies to enable and empower families, this would give families the facts that they need to help their child develop those knowledge, skills, and habits that we talk about for college and career ready, that they need to be academically, socially, and emotionally prepared for life. Deanne, are you going to check that question? So just like we have those systemic practices in our school for RTI and PBIS, we can develop systemic structures to partner with parents. So just like thinking about how do we share the expectations of the school with our families? Like, what is the mode of sharing, and is it equitable to all families? Thinking in some families live in remote areas. Do they have access to internet if you're sharing things out electronically? Also, is it shared out in the family's native language? And sometimes we might need to be very intentional about how that is shared out. You know, what is the comprehension level that's information is shared with families? And how do families know if their child's making adequate progress? So in school, do they understand the information that's being sent home about their child's progress? And how do we check for understanding with those families so that we can empower them? Also thinking about the events that you have in your school. Are they offered at different times? You know, we want everything to be equitable and accessible for them. And sometimes having things, you know, after school hours is really not beneficial for some families. So is there something that you can do during the day so that families can attend and be better able to learn what they need to do to support their child? And all the time you need to make sure at this universal level that we're serving all of the families that are in that building. And as families increases needs, so does the need of support increase. So we need to keep that in context, and we need to remember that this needs to be a systemic practice, and that's why you need to develop these structures so that you are able to support those families as those needs increase.
So just as you would increase the intensity of supports for students based on their needs, you would also naturally increase the supports for families. All right, so our first school that we would like to share is Butte Elementary, which is in Menasha Joint School District. So we have just some information on their demographics. So they have 430 some students. About 73% of the students are white, 17% Latino, 3% African American, 2% Asian, 5% are 2 or more races. About 12% of the student population are limited English proficiency students. About 18% of their students are students with disabilities, and more than 2/3 of their students are on free and reduced lunch. And so one of the things that we wanted to show was looking at schools' implementation. So what we did is we took their scores on the school-wide implementation review. And so Butte Elementary first completed the SIR, or the school-wide implementation review, in November of 2012. And their mean score on the SIR was about 5% implementation. So out of that being fully implemented according to the SIR means that they would have a score of about 80% or higher. So family engagement was an area that they did really was a weakness for them. So based on their implementation, when they last completed it in last March, they had increased their family engagement score from 5% to 95% implemented. So we do want to show that how self-assessments can be used to help schools determine how well we're implementing. And so here we have a video of Bridget Mowbray, who is also a panelist on here with us today. So this video, we will be sharing it on our YouTube page in the coming weeks, and we'll just sit back and listen.
Today I'm going to talk to you about the journey that we took doing academic parent-teacher teams at Butte. APTT stands for Academic Parent-Teacher Teams, and it's really about building capacity for effective family engagement. Today I want to talk a little bit about why we decided to choose APTT at our building, and also give you a little bit of information about what that APTT model and the essential elements look like, and then talk about our progress and the benefits that we've seen so far using APTT. When we decided why APTT, one of the factors, we did go to a presentation that was about APTT, and one of the slides that really resonated with our group was when they talked about that it's a matter of time, that it really is a myth that students spend more time with us than at home, that actually even when accounting for sleep, 55% of their time is away from school with families. So we knew that there was this time that we could really benefit from tapping and collaborating with families toward increased student achievement. When we looked at wanting to increase that family engagement, we were also thinking about family involvement and how that's different than family engagement. And we were fortunate at Butte that we felt we were doing family involvement very well. We were getting families into school and had a high level of participation for those involvement kind of events, but we weren't capitalizing and really collaborating with families. It was more bringing families in, and we wanted to instead change that and have something where we were working together towards increased student learning and achievement. So for us, the thing we wanted to try to do that was APTT. To that end, our next process was we received a grant. So the Department of Public Instruction in Wisconsin awarded 10 APTT grants within the state, and we were one of those 10 in that first cohort. It's a 2-year implementation process. We're currently in the 2nd year of that implementation, and all of the training for APTT has been provided to us by West Ed and DPI. It is a very formatted program, so I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about that. Every year, APTT meetings, there are 4 meetings. 3 of them are family meetings in which all of the parents in a classroom meet at the same time with the teacher, and the teacher presents, really collaborates with families during that time. It's a 75-minute meeting, and I'll talk a little bit later about what those elements are. But during that meeting, parents are really encouraged to talk and to really build a collaborative community around increasing student achievement. In addition to those 3 meetings, there's 1 individual session, which is a 30-minute session. For us, we held that in anytime between October and December last year, scheduled with parents, and even that individual session has a pretty scripted format of the pieces that you go through. This is, and I know this is a difficult piece to see, and the intention isn't really that you can see all of this, but this is the sheet that really guides the meeting. So when I talked before about essential elements, one of the essential elements, that top one, is to welcome and team building. And that is a really key piece. That's getting families to feel comfortable with one another and comfortable with the teacher. This was a piece that our staff was somewhat hesitant with, and West Ed gave us training about different ice-breaking pieces. That's one of the elements that you use. At the end, that was by far one of the favorite pieces, because you could really see a shift in families and how they related in their comfort level, feeling much more comfortable collaborating after that piece. Then the next session is there's a review of foundational grade level skills, and that's something that the grade level chooses based on data of a foundational grade level skill that is going to be something that the family and teacher can work on and collaborate together to increase achievement and have it be a building block in future learning for students. Then there's a section where teachers show data, and that data is class data. So I'll show you later what that graph looks like, but parents are given a folder, and in that folder their student is assigned a number, and when they look at that graph, they know what their student number is on that graph and can see where their student is in that data set, as well as how they compare to their peers. This, again, in feedback from parents, was one of their favorite pieces. They mentioned often in parent-teacher conferences, they don't have that context. They don't know how their child is comparing to their peers or where they are in their classroom. So that was a parent piece that they really appreciated. After that data, there's that skill is worked on through a different activity or games, and we do provide the take-home pieces for families to follow through with that at home. So there's a time where we talk about what the practice of activities looks like. We model that as kind of a I do, we do, you do kind of an activity, and also encourage parents to think of the kinds of things that children are going to possibly find challenging in that activity and how we can challenge them or get them to the next. And then at the end, there is a section where we're setting a SMART goal, and in that time, parents are given the opportunity to think of how many times are they going to work on this activity or game together, and where do they want to get their child, what's the goal as far as moving that data. So that's kind of what the meeting process looks like for those 3 75-minute meetings. When I talk about foundational level skill, this is something that the team has decided and chosen ahead of time based on student data and what this particular group of students needs. An example from last year at our school was 3rd grade was working on reading fluency. It's important when we're talking about what that grade level skill is with parents that we're really clear, letting them know what the skill is, but then also letting them know why that's important. So talking about fluency and what that really means, but then connecting that to why is that an important reading skill and how is that going to help their child in reading going forward. And I talked a little about what that graph looks like. So this would be like meeting number 1 fluency graph. And you can see there are across the bottom, those are student numbers, and those are private numbers. So for example, if my child is number 2, I can look at the graph and know that they were in 89 words per minute currently, or the last time that they took this data set. The yellow line shows where they should be at this point in the year, or where we would like them to be on their trajectory to meeting, and that red line is the end of year goal. So it gives parents a context for where we want them now and where we want them by the end of the year. And then we talked about that last piece is really looking at, I would sit down and I would, in that 75-minute meeting, it ends with a SMART goal. So talking about if I'm currently at 62 words per minute, my child is, for example, that the next time we meet in 60 days from now, that I want the goal to be 92, for example, reading 30 words per minute more. And to reach that, I talk about who's going to practice with the child, how many days a week, and how long each of those will look. And then we do collect one of those we keep, and then one of these sheets goes home with the families to remind them of what that goal looked like. This is from APTT number 2. So when that whole group comes back together, one of the exciting pieces is you show that data and you show that, so the red line represents the new data, and I can look at what happened as far as growth. And you can see, for the most part, there was quite a bit of student growth, not necessarily where they need to be at this point for everybody, but they are certainly moving in that direction. There were people, so before I said, what if my child was number 2, people came in, and unfortunately, they didn't see that growth. In fact, in this case, the student went backward. We had conversations about that. Parents had an opportunity. Sometimes parents said, well, I really didn't follow through on my goal. I think it's important that I do that. We had those kinds of conversations. Also just conversations about what happened here. Is that what we're really seeing? So that just led to some good conversations, because it definitely showed growth as an overall statement, but not necessarily for every single student. So as far as where we are in our process right now, we have completed the first year of that. We did do some debrief meetings with as well as Ed, and during those times we kind of talked about what our next steps were, pieces that we wanted to get even better in. We attended some additional training in Madison with our focus team, and then provided additional training for our teachers when we came back. We trained our new teachers as well. We did have some debrief meetings with staff and our PTO, and we had some with parents as well and got some good feedback as far as the pieces that they liked and different pieces they were interested in seeing. One of the pieces of feedback from staff was they definitely saw the benefit in continuing to do this. Even though it was a big transition from doing our typical parent-teacher conferences, they saw a real benefit in working with parents in this way instead. We're currently in that second year of implementation, and then currently we've done our first APTT whole group meeting. Most teachers have held their 30-minute individual meeting, and we're planning now selecting our goal, our foundational skill, as well as activity for our January meeting. Kind of the feedback I talked about a little bit, but the feedback, we did meet all of those essential elements, that first sheet that I showed with the 5 different elements of the APTT process. We did receive positive feedback both from West Ed and DPI reviewers, and looked at also there's a lot of feedback opportunities for feedback built in as far as from staff and from different reviewers within the building, as well as West Ed and DPI that we've seen. Just in our first year, almost year and a half in, we've seen that it really has changed the quality of conversations that we have with parents and families, that our conversations are much more academically focused and focused on student growth. In addition, that has led to a change in our school culture, that our PTO and our different parent groups, as well as parents volunteering, are really looking for those opportunities to collaborate in a deeper sense about working on student achievement, rather than just being here to raise money or increase, have more fun activities for our students. That's all led to a greater sense of collaboration. It has as well empowered families and let them know the important role that they play in helping their students achieve, and working with teachers to help lead towards student success. And recently we've been seeing that we really have this opportunity to share success with parents. So for example, when our recent DPI report card came out and we had some news to celebrate, it really felt not like just a teacher and student success, but that it was a community success, that it was our teachers and our families and our students. So it was a great opportunity for us to be able to say this is what happens when we all work together. So that's been very positive for our school. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and I appreciate you taking time to listen to this.
There you go. So Bayfield Elementary is in Bayfield, Wisconsin, so it's way up in the northwest corner of Wisconsin. And as their demographics show, they have an enrollment of 170 students in the district. I'm sorry, for the elementary school, they have almost 80% of their students are Native American, a few Latino, 2 or more that students that identify that they're 2 or more races, Asian possibly. Students with disability is 60%, and then that free and reduced lunch is 80%. And here again, we're using some data from the SIR to show where their students are at and where they're moving towards. So you can see that they've taken this 3 years in a row. And for family engagement, we're looking at the specific items that reference family engagement on the school implementation review. So you can see as they've moved through this process that they're increasing. And what's interesting is you can see they had a dip in 14 in their math, but then it went back up, dipped in 15, went back up in 16. But sometimes it's interesting that when we take assessments, we are answering not having the true understanding of what the question's asking, so then when we go back, we look like, oh, we really aren't doing that. So sometimes our scores go down. So that could be the case in this particular instance, not for sure. And here is partnering with families at Bayfield.
Hi, I'm Melissa Geisregen. I'm with the School District of Bayfield. I'm a third grade teacher and the RTI coordinator for the school.
Hi, I'm Ann Sullivan at the Bayfield School District. I'm a homeschool coordinator, K-12.
Bayfield School is comprised of 2 sites. We're located on the south shore of Lake Superior next to the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore. One of our schools is the LaPointe Elementary School, which is on Madeline Island. The school houses our K-5 island students, and then we have our Bayfield school site, which houses K-12 Bayfield students and 612 Madeline Island LaPointe students. We have 414 students that attend school in Bayfield. We have 81% of our students come from an ethnic minority group. The majority come from the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. 70% of our students receive free and reduced lunch, and 27% of our student population qualify for special education services. Here is a map of Wisconsin. We're at the very tip of northern Wisconsin, and you can see where Madeline Island LaPointe School is located.
As the district moves forward in its endeavor to embrace families and the community, strong relationships are developed. Those relationships are enhanced by participation in various committees. Monthly meetings are held at the tribal office with the Johnson O'Malley Committee. Members are comprised of parents or guardians of Native American children. Communication is increased due to the fact that school administration regularly attends these meetings. The Tribal Board of Education meets regularly as well. The board is comprised of members duly appointed by the Red Cliff Tribal Council. Administration often participates in these meetings as well. Meetings are held both on the Red Cliff Reservation and at the school. Other tribal committees meet regularly, such as the Young Child Wellness, the Coordinated Services Team, and the Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Committees. School staff participate as active members of these committees. Communication and awareness is increased by all. Many schools have a family engagement liaison person. That person is able to participate in individual education plan meetings as requested. An area that is not addressed on this slide but bears mentioning is that the Red Cliff Tribal Council and the District School Board have entered into an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. The Tribal Council and the School Board have joint meetings biannually, which provides a framework for respectful and cooperative communication. Collaboration with the community. Something that occurred at the Bayfield School, which has had a great success, is our intercultural in-services that occur once a month. We partner with the Red Cliff community, which strengthens and supports our student success. A variety of topics are addressed, whether it's the gathering of Native Americans, drug issues in the community, the night hunt. We've had the overview of the Red Cliff Health Facility, information on the youth center. All of this information works great so that our community and the school community understands each other better. At the Bayfield School, there are 2 large murals that honor the Ojibwe culture. Both murals involve active student participation. The mural depicting Chief Buffalo was developed by 3 middle school students. The Treaty of LaPointe established the Red Cliff Band of Ojibwe as a land grant in 1854 to Chief Buffalo, principal chief of the Lake Superior Band of Ojibwas.
To honor family values, culture, and beliefs, every year Bayfield Middle School alternative ed students involve themselves in a community project. This past spring, the middle school students were out in the Red Cliff community beautifying the bus stops by creating Native American murals. Our high school alternative education program also operates a sugar bush to carry on the Anishinaabe culture. In addition, we offer Ojibwe language table for staff once a week. This is something that took place last year, and unfortunately the community member who was part of this effort has moved on. However, we are still in the process of seeking an expert to come into the school and provide their knowledge of the Ojibwe language and culture. In Bayfield, we have created multiple communication pathways. We utilize Facebook on a regular basis. This year, our challenge is to get information out on our social networks, at least 20 posts a week. We send home letters on a regular basis, flyers, emails, and we've also have RTI and PBIS parent brochures that communicate to the parents the what RTI and PBS are, what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like within our district, so that the lines of communication are clear and parents know what's expected. Teachers also send home 2 positive postcards a week, acknowledging students for their positive behavior and efforts in school. Part of our family engagement in Bayfield, we offer once-a-month events to engage families in a variety of educational activities. At the start of the year, we offer a PBIS kickoff dance party on our baseball field with local bands consisting of a couple of our teachers. We have had a science fest for 2 years. The attendance has been phenomenal for both experiences in our science fest. We offer parent-teacher conferences both at the school and on the reservation for parents. We have a Polar Express in December. We have K-8 reading and math night, Ojibwe language and family night, the Winter Carnival, which is offered in March, kindergarten transition night, mental health family nights, incoming kindergarten family lunch, family breakfast, and once a month we offer K-5 powwows. One of our most well-attended family engagement activities is our Science Fest. Last year was our first year offering a Science Fest. We had over 200 people attend the event. This year, currently, we had over 300 people attend the event. This event wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the teachers, students, and community members that facilitate the activity and get involved. There's a dinner that is provided, and the event is held from 5 to 8 with lots of hands-on activities.
I wasn't using my breath to fill the bag. What was I using?
Print him out like this right here on the printer.
Another family night activity that we've had is a K-8 reading and math night. This event hosted 125 people. Classroom teachers and Title I staff facilitated the activities. Some of the activities that were included were Battle of the Books, presentation and trivia, 5-round Scrabble tournament, accelerated reader presentation, math games, make and take math games. There's a reading room which offered free books for parents to take, and a listening center. We also have a PBIS family event called the Winter Carnival. 85 people had lunch with K-5 students to recognize them for their positive behavior and efforts in school. K-5 students would rotate through multiple activities in the gym, which are led by high school and middle school students to develop leadership within our school. We also offer and bring in Red Cliff community members to do Ojibwe oral storytelling and crafts. What has worked for us? Offering families food, giving plenty of notice to our families, and communicating through different pathways via Facebook, email, letters, notes, home reminders, having hands-on engaging activities, being creative with our offerings, and then being organized and well-staffed.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just highlight that our next webinar is April 28th from 11 to 11:45. We promise if we show any videos, we will make sure there will be no technology issues that day. Mm-hmm. I don't think there will be. We're actually asking schools to participate live that day so they can share out some of their family engagement action plans, and then we'll also help you explore some resources on partnering with families that we've developed within the Wisconsin RtI Center. Again, here is a roster. If you would go in here and fill this out if you haven't done so already. Like Dan said, we do have this list, or this document is put in there as a resource for a handout today, as well as we will send out this whole video series connection to all of the people who have registered. And here's the link to the first webinar, which is on YouTube, but it's also on our website. So that's the link to it there. And were there any questions for schools?
Just before we open it up for questions, so we also will be sharing out links to everyone who fills out the roster, as well as everyone who completed the registration. We will also include the links to the roster, the first 2 videos in the webinar series, and we'll also share links to the school's showcases today.
Oh, so someone had asked if there are any schools that have staff contact parents and families in the summer before the kids come back to school. Melissa, is that something that you do? I'm not sure if Bridget was able to call in or not. I know there are schools that do connect with families prior to students starting school. Most of the time I hear that more at the elementary level.
Yes. We do at Bayfield Elementary. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Bayfield Elementary, we offer a number of transition opportunities for our kindergarten kiddos, and then we do offer your typical open house for the rest of the elementary and middle school, and we send letters.
Okay, and there's another question about how our parent-teacher organizations utilize to embrace families. I don't know if you have one at Bayfield?
We do not. That's
okay.
not been a successful thing for us.
Okay. So, and just to answer the question, some of the schools that I've worked with, the parent-teacher organizations a lot of times are a vehicle to share out information with families, sometimes to field questions, and also to support the implementation of PBIS in the building. So maybe if they're coming into the school and helping assist the staff members during that celebration time, maybe during kickoff, and also just getting the information out to other families in the community. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any hands raised. No more questions in the chat.
Nope.
So it is 11:45. We don't want to delay you getting some lunch or getting on to your next class. Thank you, Melissa and Bridget, for being here today. Again, we apologize tremendously for the technology issue, but we will send out the webinar, which has the links to it, and you should be able to watch it. And the videos are really great. I definitely encourage you to go back and watch those videos from the schools.